way that they could not enter into the promised land. And God led them around the desert, still providing them with food and all of their needs until everybody that had sinned died off. And then the next generations were allowed to cross under Joshua. Even Moses didn't get to go in. Joshua led the people in later on. And that's another teaching. But it says here that it came to pass on the morrow, Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi was budded and brought forth buds and blossoms and yielded almonds. Now, why did that happen? Because the people were in rebellion about who was going to lead them. The people did not understand that God chooses their leaders. And so you had 12 tribes, and you had all kind of people trying to throw down Moses and throw down Aaron, his brother, that God had set apart to lead them out of the world into the promised land. And this is the rebellion that was going on. Okay? They're rebelling against what God is doing through his chosen vessel. And you just don't do that. So, the Lord said, okay, I'm going to deal with all their murmuring and complaining. I've had it with them. And the first thing he said was, you and Aaron get out of the way, Moses, because I'm going to come in and I'm going to kill the whole bunch of them. And Moses and Aaron fell on their face and pleaded, but God said, please don't do that. You know, what's the rest of the world going to say if you lead us out of Egypt and you kill everybody out here? So God listened to them. You see, you can get God to listen to you sometimes. But he said, I'm going to deal with them. You have the leader of every tribe bring their staff, their rod, that the leader of each tribe carried around to signify who he was. Okay. He said, bring them all, throw them in here, and he said, I'm going to cause one of them to bloom. And I'm going to let the people know who I have chosen to lead them. And that's how, when we read down here, it's not only says with that Moses, when he laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness, and here it is, it was in the tabernacle of witness that God said, I'm going to witness to you who is really in charge here. And he caused Aaron's rod, who was of the house of Levi, that was the priests that were set apart, okay, aside from the 12 tribes. It not only budded, but a dead staff, a dead, dried up staff, not only blossomed, it yielded almonds. It actually produced life and sustenance, okay? And so when we read that this is what's taking place here, remember we just said a little bit ago that the only thing that was put into the Ark of the Covenant was the tables of stone? Okay, when we get over here into Hebrews and Paul is talking, it says right here that the Ark of the Covenant was overlaid round with gold. This is in the 4th verse. He said it was, what else is in there? The golden pot that had manna. There was a time during the Exodus when Moses wanted the people to remember how God was taking care of them in the desert. That he said, you take an omer of manna, and remember, God said, you can't keep it till morning because it'll rot. But Moses said, you take some of it and you put it in this vessel. And this is where it was, the golden pot, the pure pot that would keep it. And he said, you put it in there and you keep it. Now, when we go ahead and we're reading in the Mosaic rites here in Hebrews, it says, not only was the law in there and the 2 tables of stone, but that golden pot of manna was now in there. And guess what else was in there? That staff, that rod that budded and blossomed was in the ark as well. So now we have God declaring, here's my law, here's how I'll lead you, the rod that budded and blossomed and brought forth almonds. He said, this is how I will lead you. And when I'm leading you with blessing, and things that appear to be dead will blossom forth in your life. In other words, I'm giving you all sorts of provision here. If you will follow me, and you will bow your knee before me as to what I'm doing, and of course the tables of stone are in there, the rod is in there, but and here's the thing, the bread of life is in there. And Jesus said what? I am the bread of life. Jesus said, I am the bread of life. This was the manna that came down from heaven. It came down here under the old covenant. It came down with God declaring that he wanted to have mercy. He established the purity of the mercy seat, and he was residing there in that temple. And under the old covenant, only the priest could come in. But now what does Paul tell us? It's in 1 Corinthians. I'm not going to go there. But Paul says to us, do you not know that you, since Christ has come, that you are the temple of God? You are the temple. There's not some physical worldly sanctuary that we go to anymore. I mean, we go and we fellowship together in places. But the fact of the matter is that we are the temple. And when we receive Christ into our heart and we receive the gifting of his righteousness into our heart, that changes our thinking. It changes who we are. It changes how we view the world. And we function continually with his mercy operating within us. His Spirit will correct you when you make a mistake. If you sin, if you get off track, he will correct you. But he does it in love, and he does it in a manner. It brings correction, but it brings it back to who he is. Because he wants you to walk with him. And he wants to reside within you. That's the whole point. He takes up residence right here. And that's why I'm very careful about people who tell me they're Christians, but I see them, they're basically worshiping in a worldly sanctuary, if you will. And they don't ever really enter into the holiest place. And guess what? That Holy of Holies is right here. It's not someplace. And when they sing the songs about your presence is here, it's because his presence is in the individuals that are there. It's not because of the building or the space that they're occupying or anything else. It's because his presence has entered into the people, and they are there gathered in his name to worship him. And like we're doing right now, where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. He's there. He loves us. He wants to be with us. And the beauty of it is when we release that within ourselves, is when the miracles happen. It's when the miracles happen. That Jesus is able to move through us. And I've seen it happen. I give you personal testimony that I have seen people get healed. I personally have been healed myself. In fact, it was like a lightning bolt hit me because I was having some real struggles with my body. And 3 men came up to pray with me. And when they came up to pray with me, it was like we all got hit by a lightning bolt to the point that literally everybody flew back and their arms flew up. One guy went away weeping because he didn't have a solid relationship with the Lord. But the other 2 started, like you were doing, they started dancing and shouting for joy. And I was, from that moment on, the physical problem that I had been having, which was really tormenting me, was gone. It was gone. And I was completely healed of what was happening to me. That was just, I didn't do anything special to deserve it. Just I loved the Lord, and he knew it was a problem for me, and I went up and surrendered myself to him up at the altar and said, pray for me. I've had people from here to that wall over there where I was just walking at a prayer meeting like this, and I turned and I hungered for those things to happen again. And I turned and there were 3 people across the room. 2 of them were praying for 1 man. And the Lord just said, lift your hands in that direction. I heard it in my spirit. I lifted my hands and I felt, again, I just felt like lightning went through me. And it went out. And in the moment that it went through me, I saw it hit over there. And all 3 of them turned. And it was a crowded room. There were people walking back and forth praying. There were a lot of people in between us. And they all 3 turned and they looked right at me because they knew exactly where it came from. I wasn't trying to hold myself up or anything, and I kind of was like, whoa, And what just happened here? The man got up the next morning and testified that he received a healing in that home. I had nothing to do with that. I was just there worshiping the Lord, and I was in love with the Lord. And it just, the power of who he is flowed through me. He was able to use me as a vessel and go through me to go take care of something he wanted to take care of. why it was me in that room, I don't know, but it was. And that's, he doesn't show favorites, you know.
Yeah.
It can happen to any of us at any time. So the whole point is that God promised way back when he was leading the children of Israel out of Egypt that he wanted to have mercy and that he wanted to be their God. And he wanted them to be his people. And he wanted to walk among them and talk with them. But he wasn't able to do it because they would not receive him the way that they needed to. And they also had not received yet the righteousness that would allow them to enter into his presence. And he wasn't being mean about that. It's just that he's a holy God. And if they had walked into his presence, they would have dropped dead.
Yeah.
It would have killed them because of their unrighteousness. Even Moses, when he went up on the mountain, you know, had to be shielded from the glory of God. He could only see his hinder parts when he walked by. He could not look into the face of God because it would have killed Moses. But now, the beauty of it is that since Jesus came, we can walk right into God's presence, and we can be totally honest with him about us and who we are, whether we failed him, whether, you know, whatever's going on in our life, he already knows.
Right.
He's just waiting for us to tell him about it. He's waiting for us to tell him about it and be open and honest with him, and then he'll deal with it. As long as we're going to carry things around, he'll let us carry them around till we get tired of it. But he's said that once you receive me, I'll never walk away from you. I can tell you for a fact, there's been times I've walked away from him. When my wife died, I was devastated. I was so angry with God for so long. And I felt like he'd broken every promise he'd ever made me. And it took me probably 2 or 3 years to get over it. These poor kids went through it too, because it was just them and me, basically. They had to deal with my moods. But God never forsook me, and he brought me back. It took some time, but he brought me back. The point is, he was there for me all the time. And that's what I would like everybody to know tonight, is that no matter what's going on in your life, whether you've done something you shouldn't have done, or whether you haven't, he's still there. And he just wants you to be open and honest with him about it, because, frankly, he loves you with an everlasting love, and he wants to have mercy. He just wants you to tell him. Be honest with him. We bow the knee before him, before the ark, if you will. We bow the knee before the ark in that holy place, and we say, everything you have declared is right, and I need your forgiveness and your mercy. And we ask him for it. And the beauty of it is that he gives it to us freely. Okay?
I have something to add to that. I have something to add to that. That's
Okay.
crazy that you preached that, because I was going to talk about that.
Go ahead.
So let's go up in the narrow and wide gates in Matthew, and it says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. So the bigger gate can lead to something that could potentially screw up your life. And the smaller gate, which people tend not to go through because it takes too much time, it takes too much effort to walk through it, because you don't want to get crowded, you don't want too many people going in your own way too. But I feel like a lot of people choose the bigger gate because it's the most obvious choice, but it's not sometimes. So like it says, but the small gate narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few will find it. And I feel like that's true, because a lot of people tend to just underestimate the smaller way, like the things that God, like steps that aren't as big that lead to God. And I feel like a lot of people just choose to take the easy way out, and it's not what he asks of us. It's not what he wants. He wants us to do anything and everything to be with him, even if it means going through the door that's so small that you don't think you'll fit through it, but you will, because and it says a few will find it, and I think most of the people in our world are choosing bigger gate, and they need to just look for the smaller things.
Yeah.
And then the next thing was like true and false prophets. I think us as teenagers, I feel like we always look at the false ones, the false things, like oh, what clothes am I gonna wear this day, or like what thing should I sign up for school, things like that. Like I feel like we're always running to things that aren't going to love us and make us feel whole like God is. Because, like, there was an analogy I saw on Pinterest. I know that's not a reliable source in this case, but anyways, so I saw it on Pinterest, and it said, when you cut a piece of cake, you tend to go for a smaller piece, so why would you do the same for God? Because instead of taking the whole cake and not really getting much out of it, you're getting it all at once. Why don't you just take the smaller piece and the smaller piece and the smaller piece? Just get a little bit at a time, and then you'll find your way that you'll be whole again. The whole cake will be gone, and it'll be inside of you, because that's what God asks. He doesn't ask for us to take it all at once. He asks us to do it piece by piece. Because in order to really accept God and really have Him in your heart, you have to understand everything about the Lord. Everything. Not just the bigger picture.
He only gives you what you can handle anyways. He don't
Yeah.
give it. He don't pour everything all at once.
Yeah, well, and it's like I said when we started, we all go through trials in life.
Yeah.
And we can allow those trials to bring us closer to God by trusting Him with the trials that we're going through and knowing that He's with us.
Or we can let Him try
Or we can try to handle it on our own and make choices without consulting with God
Yeah.
first. And sometimes we make a choice that puts us in a worse situation than we were in to begin with. So,
Do you want to close in prayer?
okay.
Go
ahead.
Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this time that we got to spend with you. God, I thank you for the songs that you chose, that you put on our heart today. God, I just thank you for the message that Papa Lee gave us, and I thank you that your word is truth, and that your word will be there for us no matter what we go through, no matter how down we are, no matter what we've done in our lives, Lord, that your word will always be true and always will be there. All we have to do is open it. And God, I thank you for these wonderful people tonight, for coming and spending time with you and gathering and taking time out of their day. God, I just ask that you be with us this week and be in our hearts. And God, I pray that if we need correction, God, correct us. I pray that if we are on the right path, I pray that you show us. And I pray that you lead us away from the wider gate. And God, I pray that you will bring us into this wider gate, because who knows what will be behind it. God, I pray and I thank you and I love you. And God, if this is supposed to happen every week, God, I pray that it just grows and grows for you. And God, I pray that every week is stronger. And every week there's more people. And every week there's more hearts being touched. God, I ask this all in your name. Amen.
And just remember that whatever's going on in our lives, there's a song that I always like to sing that kind of reminds me of who He is and about my walk with Him. It goes like this: it's, through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. Through it